The NFL draft starts in Mobile, Alabama. We give you our top 2025 Dynasty sleepers ahead of the Senior Bowl. All this and more. It's the IBT podcast coming right at you.
I've been going dummy, out of bounds, putting on a clinic. Stick around, carrots in my hardware. KC, caught him in the crosshair. Look at me, been the guy, call him Mr. MVP. Keep your ass on the bench by my MPC. Earn my stripes like I fix this league. Your dog's on the turf, my dog's in the street. You can find me somewhere in between. Never a dull moment like a movie scene. About to do the ops like I did this beat. Let them keep talking RG3. Coming to you live. This is the In Between Fantasy Football Podcast.
All right. It is Tuesday, January 28th, 2025, and this is the In Between Fantasy Football Podcast, your place for both a refreshing and feel-good take on fantasy football and NFL gambling. It's senior week when all the NFL community boards tiny-ass planes to Mobile, Alabama to watch the best college football seniors who are heading into the NFL. The draft starts in Mobile, so therefore we're going to give you our top 11 Dynasty rookie sleepers who will be attending the festivities or who we thought were attending the festivities with one of our players. I'm your host, Seth Wilcock, and after maybe my worst gambling performance of the entire season, I'm more ready than ever to turn the page to the NFL draft and to the 2025 football season. Tonight, I'm joined by a guy who might have put me on one of the bangers of the year, Boston's boy, Steve Lawson. What's good, Steven?
Not too much, man. You know what? I think Shinedown did, in fact, put out the banger of the year. I will say I think their other song they released as a new single, it's called Dance Kid Dance, is a bit better than 365, but 365 is a banger, and I know I got you hooked on that. Well, hooked. So happy to get another Shinedown fan out here.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, man. I didn't expect I get a Slack message from Steve. I think about 8 a.m. in the morning Friday. No words, just a link to a song. I didn't even have Spotify, so I had to put it into Apple Music. I said, wow, it's actually kind of a banger. I was not expecting that. I'm not a Shinedown fan, so appreciate that. Got me going throughout the weekend. Tonight on the program, we're also joined by a light ranching big business son of a bitch, Eric Romoff. Eric, we failed. We said this time last year we wanted to be in Mobile. Of course, we put way too much on our plate. As always, we were not able to make the journey. However, we do get to talk about and discuss it. Maybe next year, maybe the year after, my friend, one of these years, I think.
Yeah, one of these years we got to be out there. While we are not there physically, we are certainly there in spirit, and we are there with tonight's program. We're going to be talking a lot about what's going down in Mobile. I'm out here living well, finally cashed that Eagles to make the Super Bowl future that I put out on these airways like 4 weeks ago. So I got a little extra bread in my bankroll, ready for a fun show.
Let's go. Awesome. Love to hear it, man. We're also joined by the guy who keeps the gas in the tank of this particular program. He's a Yinzer, he's a Ginger, and he's a former IUP Crimson Hawk audio engineer behind the scenes, Mr. Kyle Scott. Hey, Jim, how's it going for you? Are the Three Rivers still frozen over out there in the Berg right now?
The Three Rivers are freezing cold, but they are not quite frozen over. It's hard to keep that flowing water icy, and you got all these barges and ships running through, keeping the country going with our steel and coal.
That's what I love about Pittsburgh. It's what I love about Pennsylvania in this beautiful country. Shout out to the IBT family as well tonight. Looks like we got Dave in the chat who made it for the intro. What's up, man? How you doing tonight? Good to see you as always, brother. We also got Albert checking in with us early and often. Good evening, IBT. Good evening, Albert. Great to see you, buddy. And yeah, Dave saying it, maybe better than anyone. The football community is mobilizing to Mobile. 100%, man. It's an exciting time in these dynasty streets. Also, we got just one segment for you today, Rave Rookie Reviews. We're going to split it in two parts. We'll give you our top 11 rookie sleepers to watch at the Senior Bowl who have the most to gain or lose. Also, we'll give you our top 2025 TV shows who have a lot to prove this year as well. If you're new to the channel and you enjoy this type of content, please subscribe, come back, hang out with us again, and give this video a like whether you are new or not. It's the easiest way to support what we got going on here at IBT. We greatly appreciate. The only reason we had like a huge week on the channel last week is because of people like Dave, Albert, everyone who rides with us every single week in the chat. You guys are the lifeblood behind this, so thank you so much. And what do you say, Steve? Should we go ahead and jump in? Should we get this thing started? Go 632 or whatever that song is?
It's 365, but yeah, let's do it.
All right, let's get it going here in Rave Rookie Reviews. I think sometime in the future for that drop, we should all come back and be in like white jumpsuits afterwards. Wouldn't that be great? I just get that feeling. Put out some good internet content like that. I think eventually, Steve, you got a white jumpsuit laying around at all?
Oh yeah, you know me. You know the gays. We have all sorts of jumpsuits laying around. We're all ready to go at the drop of a hat for a quick change.
How does Taylor Swift do that, Eric? How did she do how do you do the 1 second quick change? Like,
why would Eric know this?
I don't know.
Let me just tap into my extensive experience as a backstage wardrobe manager for the largest touring act in human history.
Just in general, I don't
help you. Do it. Let me tell you, I've had to do a quick change for a show I was in, and it's just people are standing there with clothes. Like, you just strip in front of people, and they are holding the clothes up, and you just jump into it.
All right, well, we're talking Senior Bowl here. We're going to talk our top 11 rookie sleepers that most of them will be playing in the Senior Bowl this week. You can keep an eye on them. Make sure you guys are keeping an eye on the Twitterverse. I know a lot of my colleagues down at Fantasy Pros, Derek Brown, Mike Maher, they're down with the gang. So keep your head on a swivel for content coming out from them and just everyone in the fantasy football industry. They do a great job. Jim Nagy firing out some shots early on Twitter this morning. He wasn't afraid to get in the mix here, Eric. I don't know if you saw that shrapnel, but Jim Nagy, the GOAT of Senior Bowl, the guy who puts on this event, firing some shots early this morning on the Shrine Bowl. I don't know if you got that one.
Oh, no, I didn't. I'm absolutely going to look it up, though. I mean, look, these two events are essentially facing off as the bellwether of the official start of the NFL offseason. So not surprising to hear that the organizer of one is throwing a little shade at the other, right?
Yeah. We got 4 days of practice. You can also find most of that video online as well at various places. And then we have the Senior Bowl actually happening on Saturday as well. So make sure you guys are tuning in for that. And let's start here at the quarterback position with some of our rookie sleepers. Eric, I want to turn it to you first with a guy that I like to call Crybaby Dart, Jaxson Dart from Ole Miss. Extremely efficient this season, 69.3 completion percentage, led the SEC, also led the SEC with over 4,000 passing yards as well. 29 touchdowns, just 6 interceptions thrown to Trey Harris and company. Also had a lot of rushing upside. Is that kind of what you're seeing here? 1,500 yards in 3 seasons at Ole Miss after transferring from the USC Trojans. I would love to see him play in the college football playoffs. However, he kind of choked down the stretch, thus leading to the name Crybaby Dart here.
Yeah, I can't speak to his propensity to be a crybaby or not, but the statistics that he put up this year really speak for themselves, right? You mentioned a couple of them: 69% completion rate, almost 4,300 passing yards, 29 scores, a 7.3% touchdown rate, almost 11 yards per attempt. Basically, every single statistical category, Jaxson Dart went out and set new career highs this year. And, if nothing else, doing this repeatedly, setting these new career marks in the SEC year after year after year is certainly a bit promising. You mentioned he's a nifty runner. He's got good acceleration. His arm is solid, right? Like he delivers the ball with good velocity. especially in the intermediate part of the field. But if nothing else, like I think he kind of has the skill set and the profile to where if things go well for him at the Senior Bowl, if things go well for him during the pre-draft process, he's on the short list of guys that can kind of be in the conversation for that third quarterback off the board, right? So I think he's got a lot to prove. And at least for me, sure, the Rebels kind of stumbled down the stretch and, didn't make the playoffs, but ultimately I think he's got a lot of momentum heading into the NFL process.
Yeah, I'm kind of excited to see what Dart can do because I think I'm lower than consensus on him. But from all accounts, like if he can bring some of this rushing production into the NFL, like, he's gonna have a floor. That's what we always say, right? Like we want guys who have rushing floors. So kind of excited what he can do. I think Lane Kiffin did a great job with him down there. I know I like to give him crap for crying, but like this is a guy who wears his heart on his sleeve, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. So best of luck to him down at the Senior Bowl. Steve, I want to turn to your rookie sleeper as well at the quarterback position. Memphis had a great run this year. They finished 11-2, fourth in the AAC this season. And I feel like you have a type. I feel like you love your Memphis guys. You always are kind of, picking down there out of this AAC school. But Seth Henigan, Henny as I like to call him, 4-year starter, 104 passing touchdowns, 31 interceptions, over 14,000 passing yards. What are you seeing from the 6'3" senior early in the process, and what do you think we'll see this week? Allegedly already, quote, turning heads early this week, which I'm sure we'll hear a lot of from various sources this week.
Yeah, so I do have a propensity to love Memphis. My favorite player in the NFL, Antonio Gibson, came out of Memphis. He was a running back there. And then the head coach of my school, we poached him from Memphis. Mike Norvell was a Memphis guy. So I am a big fan of Memphis. I like Seth Henigan. What I want to see out of him is, can he elevate? Like, can he elevate to the talent around him? Because I think that's the number one thing that's held him back from really getting the acclaim that a lot of these other guys have, is that he's good against like the mediocre competition. It's just we haven't seen it enough, but he's quicker than you'd think. He's a little bit better on the first step. He's not exactly a rusher per se, but he has had some games where he's popped. Good arm strength, not elite. Good ball placement, not elite. I would like to see some elite, something, anything elite for me to feel like this guy could be maybe like a bridge quarterback. Like I see him, listen, not everybody's going to be a star. And if you're at the Senior Bowl, you're typically a late kind of bloomer. You're not really getting it done in the way that a lot of these like early declares are getting it done.
Sure.
But I could see him being a Gardner Minshew kind of guy who bounces from team to team to team to team to team and kind of gives you a year, maybe 2 years of production if he can just show a little bit of something more. And I know that's such a vague term to be like more, but football guys kind of know what I'm talking about, right? Like where the eye test it's just not passing yet. It's just not passing yet. And I need to see something elite, whether it's his ball placement or his arm strength or his ability in the pocket to move. All of it is solid. Nothing's elite.
Well, I think that's the cool thing about the Senior Bowl is we remove a lot of these X factors. Like he only played with, X amount of good wide receivers at Memphis. Like honestly, Memphis always has, 1 or 2 decent running backs that come out, at least are guys to be on NFL rosters. I've had a couple wide receivers over the years, but never truly played with elite competition. Also, though, outside of maybe playing the Naval Academies, specifically Army, over the past 2 seasons, also probably hasn't played the most elite defense. So it will be kind of a really good tell of, okay, how does he work with different wide receivers that are better prospects than what he's been playing with? And at the same time, how does he stack up against these cornerbacks who there's some really good secondary pieces out there in this Senior Bowl crop. So I'm looking forward to Henigan as well. I like that call out to you. Eric, do you think Henigan is someone, if he does prove himself, could maybe slide into day 3 of the NFL draft with some quarterback rooms that kind of need filled out here in the NFL right now?
Yeah. I think if things go well, he can garner some, some late round interest, right? The thing that I like most about him is he looks like such a natural thrower of the ball. Like his motion is nice and compact. He can do the whole like firm with an arc thing, but can deliver the ball on all 3 levels, right? So like he's got a lot of the kind of foundational things that you're looking for there, pretty solid pocket presence overall, right? So if you're able to kind of do the needful and you're not presenting yourself as a potential liability,
Right.
then the scouting departments will take a closer look at what you're doing at the Senior Bowl during the draft and see if anything about that process kind of jumps out and catches their attention, right? Whereas if you're sloppy in any of those foundational areas, a lot of times you just kind of get crossed off and they're not paying super close attention to you during the process.
Well, we've seen it, a couple of years ago. Jake Haener was kind of the belle of the ball at Senior Bowl. We usually see one of these guys step up at the quarterback position down here in Mobile. So maybe it could be Seth Henigan, who, quote, turning heads here early in the practices as of Tuesday. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to shout out, and I don't know if we can specifically call him a true sleeper, but he's definitely kind of getting closer to that territory now. I've spoken about Jalen Milroe at length on this program, the ups and downs of this guy's career. I actually had him at 4 in my early Dynasty rookie rankings for 2025, and I've since moved him back closer to 12, just because we have seen ups and downs with this guy. 16 passing touchdowns this season, but 11 picks. But he was electric on the ground, right? 700 rushing yards, 20 touchdowns, unstoppable against Georgia in the first half of that game. LSU ran buck wild on them and Auburn in the Iron Bowl, that rivalry game there. So I like what we've seen at the highs of Milroe, but also the lows are terrible. Like that Oklahoma game cost me a lot of money. That Michigan Pop-Tarts Bowl game where the rain gods just came down and poured on Jalen Milroe cost me a lot of money. Move, as I mentioned, from 4th back to 12th in my Dynasty rookie rankings, but I still think he still has the athleticism that we'll see at the Combine. And also maybe this week he can show off his passing prowess a little bit, the Senior Bowl, to still keep him as a first-round pick, even if that's someone trading back in late in the first round to get him. I think the change in offense from Tommy Reese to Nick Sheridan this season really kind of hurt his passing. We didn't see him develop there as we wanted to. I know we've talked about this on the show before, and still had Ryan Williams, some really good wide receivers to throw to, but this is an Anthony Richardson type of situation. Mixed reports already coming out of the Senior Bowl that earlier today he missed 8 passes in a row, but others claim he had surprising zip on the ball that we weren't seeing from the other prospects today. So I don't know where to go with Milroe here, boys. He's someone going to be very polarizing, maybe the most polarizing prospect in this draft, but it's hard not to like the upside, Steve, with how much he can run.
Yeah, Jalen Milroe is an interesting kind of dude, right? There's a player who I think he profiles a lot like. He's not quite as tall as him, but he reminds me a lot of Terrell Pryor. I don't know if people remember Terrell Pryor,
yeah.
but at Ohio State, he was really
wide
electric.
At one point, yeah.
He was a wide receiver in the NFL, but he played quarterback for the Ohio State University, and he was really good at being a quarterback, but he was really good because he could run so well, right? You did not want him standing stationary in the pocket and just trying to zing the ball all over the place, right? I think Alabama put him in bad situations and didn't play to his strength in the passing game nearly enough, right? This is a guy who is not going to be able to stand in the pocket and dissect a defense. Not yet, at least, right?
Yeah.
I think with the right situation, Jalen Milroe will succeed. If you look at a team and this is going to sound insane to say, but Philadelphia, if Philadelphia took a chance that, hey, we're going to draft this guy, we'll sit him for a couple years behind Jalen Hurts and see what we can do with that. That's the situation where he'll succeed. You can't stick him on the New York Giants. You can't stick him on the Raiders. That's not going to work. It's not.
You need a run-heavy team. You need a team that's going to buy into.
You need a run-heavy team and a team that is going to be committed to using his strengths rather than trying to turn him into something that he's not. And that's the number one problem that people run into with guys like Jalen Milroe, Terrell Pryor, Justin Fields. The list goes on and on and on and on and on of these really athletic quarterbacks that were asked to be pocket passers. And that's just not what they are. Now, Justin Fields is a whole different conversation I could have. But I think Jalen Milroe has the ability, if people are patient, if they want him to contribute this year and be a solid starting quarterback, you will end up with an Anthony Richardson situation.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what we can kind of do at the Senior Bowl. Eric, do you have any thoughts on Milroe? I know we've kind of had this exact discussion before, but I think there are so many layers to this. It's good to peel back the curtain on a little bit, especially after the mixed reporting that we saw down in Mobile. Like, we're seeing it on the internet play out in real time. Some people think this guy has a really nice arc to his ball, and it has some zip on it, and other people think he's absolute dog shit. So where do you kind of stand in this mix of reporting here?
Yeah, I mean, look, Jalen Milroe is certainly on that short list of quarterbacks that could end up being the third guy off the board this year, right? And I mean, Steve mentioned Anthony Richardson, right? Like, you talk about a guy that has the skill set to look phenomenal in all the measurables, and if that happens, it only takes one team, right? Doesn't matter if all the other scouting departments, if all the reporting out there is beating up this guy's game. One team can fall in love with him, and all of a sudden he's a top 10, top 12 type pick, right? So that in and of itself, it makes me like Steve's Philadelphia take a little bit less, right? Because I don't think that they're going to move up to get him, and I don't think they're going to be in a position to draft him over the team or two that might fall in love with him.
Oh, right. Yeah, sure.
A team that might actually be an interesting spot, who actually did a pretty good job getting a little bit more than expected out of Justin Fields. Your Pittsburgh Steelers, Seth.
I wouldn't mind it. I wouldn't mind it.
Speculating in the Jalen Milroe market.
I wouldn't hate it, honestly. In my first mock draft, I actually had Tennessee trading out of the first pick, going back to 6, grabbing Tet McMillan, and then using some of their assets to come back in and get Jalen Milroe at the end of the first. I think maybe that's something we see, but
reasonable.
I wouldn't mind a little Milroe action out here in the Berg. I mean, Artie Smith, he's the guy, right? He's the guy if you want to run it. Yeah. So I don't hate. It'd be fun, man. It'd be a ride. It would at least be exciting. Something we haven't had here, aside from about 4 games with Justin Fields this year. So, like that discussion on the quarterbacks, gentlemen, let's shift to the running back position, where I first want to talk about a player that is not going to be participating at the Senior Bowl that I was really looking forward to seeing. That's Kalel Mullings coming out of Michigan. Man, I mean, this is one of those situations, out with a minor injury, total bummer, because I think he had more than anybody to gain, because most of the time, like, we've seen converted wide receivers, Antonio Gibson, converted quarterbacks, Roschon Johnson, they really don't stand out for fantasy purposes aside for like a season or two. Like, you occasionally get like the Cordell Patterson, like year 10 or 11 in his career, pops off. Tyrone Tracy, he was great as a rookie. Gibson was really good as a rookie, but they usually don't have a ton of staying power in the league. Well, how about a converted linebacker? That's Kalel Mullings. 948 rushing yards this past year, 12 touchdowns over who many believed was the incumbent at Michigan, Donovan Edwards, who only had 550 rushing yards, 4 touchdowns this year. Like, Donovan Edwards, like, the dude was on the damn NCAA cover. Like, he was hyped coming in this year. Yeah, and Mullins just was absolutely much better of a running back. 6'2", 233, thick son of a bitch who's a bruiser. I like that he's physical between the tackles, but at the same time has great vision to find the hole. I would thought we would learn a lot from him in this pre-draft process, because I don't know if his explosiveness is there. I don't know if his top line speed is there to become anything more than like a day 3 running back dart throw. Total bummer. I think he could have really moved up draft boards, and I feel like I'm not going to learn as much and know as much about Kalel Mullings that he's anything more than like a final round Dynasty rookie guy at this point, not seeing him down there in Mobile. Do you agree, Eric, or do you think maybe we can see something from him at the Combine if he even runs?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really the thing, right? Like, it puts the emphasis on him to participate fully at the NFL draft combine, right? So yeah. I don't think that the ship has sailed for him by any means, right? He can still continue to make and add to his case, but his margin of error when they're in Indianapolis has gotten much thinner, right? So it's, I mean, he's a player that's got some holes in his game that is going to need to show some things in this process, and just mathematically he has a shorter opportunity to do so. So I think he can still pop. I think he can still find his way onto a roster, right? Like, he's kind of got that bruising, like almost Brian Robinson type of style, right?
Yeah, where, I think it's good comp.
Like there's a role for that on a lot of NFL teams, right? He's not going to be a feature back, but there are absolutely rosters that need that type of skill set. So he goes out there and does it. I think he can still find himself drafted for sure.
Steve, does kind of what we saw with Blake Corum in his rookie year and the lack of usage scare you away from someone like Mullings, who was really the RB3 when Corum was on this Michigan team? And he's like, a lot of people are kind of coming out and saying, oh, it was the offensive line at Michigan that was really, what was boosting Corum and now potentially Mullings and Edwards. Like, does that scare you off at all? Because to me, it doesn't. I like running backs coming from the Big Ten.
Does it scare me off? A little bit, because I don't really love Blake Corum as a prospect. What will scare me off of Mullings at this point is his 40 time. You know my rule. If you don't run a sub 4.5, I don't want you as my running back. And I don't know if at 6'2", to whatever he's pushing at this point, he's going to be able to get past that. Yeah, Brian Robinson's a solid comp, I guess, at his highest end. I think for Mullings, he could be Brian Robinson, but realistically, he's just kind of a plodding runner. He's slow. He's
could
not
be
able
Zamir
to...
White. Could be Zamir White.
Yeah, he could be like Zamir White, maybe a little bit slower
Yeah.
than that. Even like it's just like Isaiah Spiller comes to mind.
Oh, geez, I hate Isaiah. No offense. I'm sure he's a great guy. I was never high on Spiller. That was the one guy in that draft class. I was like, pump the brakes on.
That's who comes to mind when I think of guys like this. Like, it's just not anything. It's not going to draft him in the 4th round of your dynasty drafts at your own risk. Like, it's probably inconsequential, honestly. But
yeah,
I don't think this was going to be the showing.
Since we're talking about the Rams' backfield, I'm less concerned about what happened with Corum. That has everything to do with McVay just locking in on his guy. And the guy that he locked in on, a top 5 running back in fantasy football this year, Kyren Williams, who ran a 4.65 40. Obviously, the exceptions are out there.
So the exception,
generally, I think your rule is bang on, Steve.
I will also say that I usually speak, when it comes to like Senior Bowl and stuff like that, very in NFL terms. Kyren Williams is not a good running back. Like, by any measure, by any metric, he's not good. He's not efficient. He's not breaking tackles. He doesn't hit home runs.
He's an above average NFL
guy. He's the poster child of opportunity having a greater impact than skill.
Yeah, like he's not an above average running back. Any other running back in that situation that's starting in the NFL, almost every other starting running back would do more.
Yeah, God. All right,
your day will come. Yes. Never wrong, Seth. Just early.
I know. Steve, I do want to go to your running back sleeper here that you highlight. It's Trevor Etienne coming from Florida. Eventually transfers to Georgia for his senior year. And this was another guy that I just thought had a kind of like Donovan Edwards. I thought was really going to have a great season. Just overall disappointing for Georgia, I think, as a whole. And he really became a rotational committee back down there, and actually regressed a little bit in the yards per attempt metric, down from 5.7 and 6.1 the years before, down to 5.0. Had some nice games like against Texas in both those contests, so that was good to see. But I'm a little low on Trevor Etienne, especially kind of after what Travis did this past year in the NFL too. And you guys know me, I rode the Travis Etienne hype all in 23. He won me a lot of money that year. So mixed opinions here on me for Etienne. Do you also have mixed opinions? And what do you think we can learn in this pre-draft process, specifically down here at the Senior Bowl, where on a lot of people's winners boards already?
Yeah, so I'm not going to hold what his brother did against him. I think that's just that sounds like a personal issue that I'm happy to talk with you about after the show. But yeah, it was a down year, and it was a down year for a guy that everybody thought was going to have an up year. I think we really undervalued how important Ladd McConkey and Brock Bowers were to the Georgia Bulldogs. That's what happened. At least that's what I think happened. I don't think Trevor Etienne forgot how to play football by any means. And I would like to see him show us that he's explosive, can hit holes, read, and do a little pass blocking. I'd like to see a little more 3-down capability out of him. This Senior Bowl, I am low on him. I'm low on him, but I'm low on Georgia in general. Everyone just looks not good.
Yeah.
But what the fuck do I know, right? Because Carson Beck's making $8 million a
Well,
year for the
well,
Miami
yeah.
Hurricanes, and I'm doing this show for free.
Yeah.
So, like, who am I? So Trevor Etienne, I think he could very easily have a great Senior Bowl and bump his stock way, way, way up. I think he's plenty talented. It's just can he translate it to
Mhm.
game time?
Yeah, and I think the interesting thing about Trevor Etienne is he does offer some upside as a pass catcher, a lot like his brother. And I think that's maybe where we could see some potential interest from teams. 32 receptions this past year, a career high for him. I'd also kind of like to stay in that pass catching niche here of running backs and introduce LeQuint Allen, running back from Syracuse, to everyone as well. It was a really strong season for the Orange under Fran Brown, finishing 10-3. Kyle McCord looked electric up there in the dome. LeQuint Allen finishes with back-to-back seasons over 1,000 yards, top 7 in the ACC, scored 30 combined touchdowns in that span, first in the conference this year in rushing touchdowns. The real boost, though, this season with McCord at quarterback, though, it was the reception, boys. 64 receptions. That's a huge mark for any college football running back. I know from a pro standpoint, 64 is not crazy amount or anything, but
It would be like third in the league this year.
Yeah. I guess compared to previous
Like
years,
I think that's Alvin Kamara numbers.
Yeah, down year Alvin Kamara numbers for sure. Like we don't see a ton of running backs anymore getting upwards of 90 plus receptions. We do see it occasionally. But LeQuint Allen, absolutely awesome to watch. I can specifically remember watching him on a Friday night against UNLV. He put the team on his back, 4 touchdowns, overtime. There was a specific play in there, and I was like, man, this guy might be the real deal because he was stopped short of the line, like 2 yards behind it, and just put the team on his back, continue to push forward and get the yards he needed. Also cashed me that underdog ticket, so I'm a big fan of LeQuint Allen. Could be just probably another day 3 pick, but I look forward to seeing if he can separate himself with his pass blocking and with his catching ability here. Very similar to Trevor Etienne. So, Eric, I want to ask you, Etienne, LeQuint Allen, do you think they have potential to separate themselves because of their pass catching ability in a absolutely loaded running back class in 2025?
Yeah, to an extent, right? I think the thing to really hone in on is not their ability as a pass catcher, but their ability as a pass blocker. And that's absolutely what I'll be looking for during this process, specifically with the Senior Bowl, right? Like if you want to be a pass catcher, you want to be on the field when your team is in third down and in long distance to go, you got to make sure you're not getting your quarterback completely blown up. So I think that will probably be a bit more determinative than, their ability to make a linebacker look silly in one-on-one drills. Moreover than anything else, like I certainly hope that NFL front offices and scouting teams are not prisoners of the moment, because look, Etienne's Georgia tape is good, right? Fine. His Florida tape is electric. Like if they go back just one season, I think they will absolutely fall in love. So if I had to pick one of the two to kind of do a bit more rising, I do think it'll be Etienne. And while his brother's performance should have no bearing on his draft capital, look, Q rating is a legitimate thing, right? Like guys in NFL front offices see that a player has a brother who's been able to have some margin of success in the NFL ranks, and they give him a little bit more latitude, right? Same things happen with James Cook, right? Being related to Dalvin Cook, you're now familiar with him. You think you can draw some more comparisons that may or may not be there. So I do think it plays in his favor a bit, although it probably shouldn't.
Eric, I want to talk about your rookie sleeper, and crazy to call this guy a sleeper after the 2023 season he had.
Yeah.
Doak Walker Award winner, the best running back in the nation a year ago, over 1,700 yards, was Ollie Gordon for Oklahoma State. And look, man, I was buying into the hype coming into this season. I thought especially what he could do, not only as a rusher, but as a pass catcher. Almost 40 receptions last year, 300 receiving yards as well. Like to see the fall off, had almost 100 fewer carries this year, almost 1,000 fewer rushing yards, and like I had the ticket on Oklahoma State to win the Big 12. Like I was way overly invested, and Eric, they kind of just fell apart down the stretch. So what do you think we can see from Ollie Gordon? Because I think it's another case of recency bias, if you would. I think we kind of forget what he did in 2023 just because 2024 such an off year for this program, man. Like so many questions. We've seen the defense go down since they lost Knowles at defensive coordinator a couple of years ago, and like I'm sad, man. That hurt me. That hurt me, and that hurt the bankroll.
Yeah, I mean, talk about a guy that you just need to go back 2 years and look at his tape, and you'll absolutely fall in love. And that's Ollie Gordon, a player that I spent early draft round capital over at our friends at Squad Blitz when we drafted our IBT team heading into the college football season. For those that are not looking back 2 seasons, 2023, where he won that Doak Walker Award, 2,062 scrimmage yards, 1,700 rushing, 324 through the air. So absolutely a dynamic playmaker that can not only gash you on the ground, but is a very effective receiver. I'll say arguably, realistically, he's more like in the conversation to be among the best pass protectors of the running backs that are in this year's class. Ergo, he has, he's checking that needful box that he's not going to be a liability, and they can just evaluate his ability as a runner. Look, the fall off this year was kind of weird. I'm closer to your side of the spectrum, where I think it has a little bit more to do with Oklahoma State on the whole just kind of falling apart, and that dragging down Ollie Gordon's production.
Right.
I mean, look, he wasn't great this year, facing off against stacked boxes. So if he goes to, a very early stage rebuild where they don't have, a viable quarterback, where their offensive line is beat up, maybe like the Raiders, then it could be tough sledding for him, getting up to speed at the NFL level. If he goes a little bit later, where he goes to a more established team, they have someone that's functional at quarterback and a decent offensive line. I think this is a kid that can absolutely explode, right? Like, he's on a very short list of players who has a 100 yard rushing, 100 yard receiving game. He's got that good long speed, right? Despite being 6'1", 211, like, he can pull away from some people in the open fields. He's pretty good about getting what the offensive line blocks for him. I'd like to see him be a little bit more decisive when that hole opens up. But ultimately, like, I think this is a kid that, given the right opportunity, can be a legitimate difference maker in the NFL level, and has a solid shot at being a 3-down back very early on in his career.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. And, man, I've always been a pseudo kind of like closet Oklahoma State fan since like Mason Rudolph was back there in the day. And I love what they do down there in Stillwater. But Steve, just such a disappointing year for this entire program. It trickles down to Ollie Gordon. I was on Mag's show, the Dynasty Hot Seat, earlier today, and actually went through my top 24 rankings, my updated version. I have Ollie Gordon kind of square in the second round of rookie drafts. I think you would argue, I know you've been high on Ollie Gordon, that maybe currently as it stands, he's one of the steals of drafts, and you're probably hoping he doesn't move up too much higher in draft boards. I know you're all about him.
Yeah, I'm all in on Ollie Gordon at this point. I mean, listen, when a team sucks, the first position that's going to suffer is the running back. It's just naturally going to be that way because you're down. You can't establish the run. You're getting the stacked boxes. Your quarterback's bad. Your wide receivers aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing. It was a mess. And that was not Ollie Gordon's fault, right? Like, defenses knew that the one thing they had to take away was Ollie Gordon. Anything after that, they were fine with. It didn't matter. Ollie Gordon profiles as a 3-down back. He profiles as a very good 3-down back. I think Ollie Gordon should be a Cincinnati Bengal next season.
Easy, bro. Chase Brown.
Chase Brown shares.
Come on, dude.
I think Ollie Gordon should be a Cincinnati Bengal next year.
Easy.
I don't think Chase Brown's the guy. I think there's other teams that I could happily stick him on and be happy with it. I could see him being a Bear. I could see him being a Charger. I could see him potentially replacing David Montgomery and being in the 1-2 punch with Jahmyr Gibbs up in Detroit. There's a lot of ways you could go with that, but I mean, Montgomery's kind of locked in right now. Ollie Gordon is an NFL running back today. He'll be an NFL running back a year from now, 5 years from now, 6 years from now. He is my RB2 in this class. So I am happy to have him in the second round of drafts. I have him firmly as my RB2 just behind Ashton Genty.
Wow. Yeah, a lot of praise. We'll see what we hear from down at Senior Bowl. Already another guy who kind of making reports that, hey, maybe just a bad year. And again, this is why we love the Senior Bowl, because it's removing factors like potentially a toxic Oklahoma
Don't you
State
wish he
coaching
just
staff.
left? Like, don't you wish he just left?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
But
why. That's why you got to do it. Like, unless the NIL is so good, you got to go. You can't stay. Like, I love
I mean,
loyalty. I do.
if
But
the net of it is that he lands with the Chargers, like giddy up. That would
yeah,
be such a dream
he'll run
spot.
for 1,300 yards on the Chargers.
well, and speaking of a guy who stayed loyal and probably should have taken the money and ran, let's go to the wide receiver position with my favorite sleeper. There is Elic Ayomanor, wide receiver out of Stanford. Someone that I think the more and more I watch his tape, that I think could very well be a first round wide receiver in this upcoming draft. I've moved him ahead of Luther Burden in my personal rankings. I know that's hot. I know people don't like that. We can touch on Burden another day, but that's a weird tape to watch. That's some weird scheme they're running down there. Very poor offense they had there in Mizzou after some early hype. But in 2023, if you look back, again, looking back, what's why it's important to watch all the film and not just 1 year. In 2023, there was a game where Ayomanor went for over 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. The cornerback he was matched up against in that game, Travis Hunter, one of the top cornerbacks in the country. I know it wasn't Travis Hunter from 2024, but still Travis Hunter nonetheless. And it was another putrid 3-9 season for the Cardinal, highlighted by inconsistent quarterback play from Ashton Daniels, among others. But anyone who watched Stanford, and I remember specifically watching the first game of the year, and the play-by-play and the color could not talk enough about Elic Ayomanor. Like, you might as well have been a drinking game every time they mention this guy, right? Like, because he is someone who should have the ball in his hands, and you see his catch radius; it's amazing. I think like we did see him regress some from a big play standpoint, but he still had back-to-back seasons of 62 plus receptions and 6 touchdowns with questionable surrounding cast. I'm really excited to see what he can do this week with competent quarterback play. I've been looking on the Twitter streets. I've been looking in the YouTube streets to see if anyone's saying anything about him. I'm not seeing many people say much about him right now. So I think he's still under the radar. And I think by the time, everything's said and done, Eric, this is a guy who could be a top 36, top 40 player in the NFL draft coming out of Stanford here.
Yeah, absolutely a player that stands to benefit from showcasing his skill set outside of the context of this team that he was on last year, right? So definitely excited to see him go through this process. I mean, good accelerator, good straight line speed, really good at high pointing the ball and just winning those contested catch situations, right? So these are things that NFL front offices, tend to look for, right? Solid hands, creates pretty good separation. So I think he checks a lot of the boxes. And if he can get into this circumstance where he is playing with a higher caliber of talent around him, if he can, hold or advance those positions, I think he will end up on a lot of scouting teams' radars.
Man, I'll tell you what, I would put money on it. If Penn State would have somehow snuck into this guy's DMs, got him into the transfer portal, I think Penn State wins the championship. Like, this is the type of guy who, if he had a Drew Aller, could have legitimately lit up college football this past season. So I love Elic Ayomanor. He is not. Whoa, take it. I mean, if we had a better receiver,
probably not.
We beat Notre
Ohio
Dame.
State was the best team.
I mean,
okay,
look,
well,
Ohio State was the best team.
We'll at least get to the championship.
Yeah, two things can be true here, right? Like, it would be beneficial to both Penn State and to Elic Ayomanor to have linked up, but also not mean that Penn State is winning the national championship.
Yeah,
I'm just saying. Hey, we're making some moves out there right now in the portal, boys. It's gonna be getting better for us here in the coming months. But that's a different program. Steve, I want to throw it back to you. You got a really deep cut for us here. I mean, perhaps the deepest cut of the night. It's Isaac TeSlaa, wide receiver out of Arkansas, former JUCO guy, comes from Hillsdale College. Pretty high up there in the portal 2 years ago. I remember when Arkansas got this guy, it was Oh, hey, kind of a shiny new toy here. I know one of our co-owners of the site, Tyler Bradley, big Arkansas guy. So very, very plugged in down there to Woo Pig's Suey country. Pretty big, shifty white bull, 6'4". What do you like about him? Because he wasn't the wide receiver 1 or the wide receiver 2 on his own team the past year. Is he someone you think who just kind of gets in different situation and can maybe prove something at the Senior Bowl?
I'd like to see his physicality is what I want to see at the Senior Bowl. I want to see if he can make the transition potentially to tight end, because he is a vertical threat, right? Like that's kind of what he was at Arkansas. And anytime you see someone who's 6'4" and is a deep ball threat, like that's pretty exciting, right?
Sure.
And maybe he's not shifty enough to be a receiver, but he certainly could profile as a tight end. And this is the kind of guy that teams want to shift to tight end, because the move tight end is still very in style in the NFL. You want guys you can shift inline, shift outline. I want to see his run blocking, frankly. Like that's what I want to see. I want to see how he blocks, how he attacks off the line. I don't think he's going to make his mark being like, oh, I'm going to shift past and like run past defenders. He'll be able to do that once in a while, but he's got to figure out how to be a more physical, bruising presence. And then you can see the comps to other tight ends that have done similar, right? Like you don't necessarily have to be a great blocker in the NFL to play tight end. Jonnu Smith is not a good blocker, right?
Yeah.
Like we know this.
Yeah.
Brock Bowers is not a good blocker.
Yeah.
But he does fine. Hunter Henry, bad blocker, bad for fantasy purposes, fine for the NFL. Like it happens. And he profiles this way. So I'm not looking at him as like this sneaky Puka Nacua, right? Like, because everyone wants to say, oh, you looked at a white wide receiver. Like, who are you looking at? Julian Edelman, right? Like, it's not, that's not what I'm saying. But he certainly can look and say, hey, I'm more physical than you may think I am. I'm better at the line of scrimmage than you think I am. I'm better in a contested catch situation than you may think I am. And that could give him some value, probably still in the undrafted free agent department.
Yeah.
But it's something, right? And I think this is the opportunity. These are the guys that the Senior Bowl is built for. They have no prayer. They go, they show that they're more than what we think they are.
Yeah, I mean, I remember a couple years ago, he still had some hype, but not as much like going into it. Christian Watson coming out of the Senior Bowl, like he was a guy who, I mean, everyone's just like, I mean, this guy's huge. He's like, I remember just like the word on the street. They're like, this guy's insanely huge, and he also is going to lay down a crazy 40 times. So I think there are places for someone like Isaac TeSlaa to boost himself in the draft process.
And if he does that, who's to say his draft stock doesn't rise significantly? Like if he burns past the cornerback that's covering him and then goes to the combine, puts up a 4.4, like my friend, you're a Los Angeles Charger, right? Like that's what's going to happen.
Eric, I'm going to throw it over to you for our last wide receiver rookie here. It's Xavier Restrepo, wide receiver out of Miami. He'll be 23 by April. The guy's played a lot of college ball, 5 different seasons here, but back-to-back 1,000-yard season, benefited from that dynamic run from Cam Ward, 11 touchdowns on the season for Restrepo. What are you kind of liking for him here heading into the Senior Bowl? What are you hoping we learn over the next few months before Dynasty rookie drafts transpire?
Man, I'm suddenly becoming the receipts guy here on IBT. But if you recall, around this time last year, he was exploring the NFL draft process. And I was talking about Xavier Restrepo at that point.
Yep.
He decided to come back, and like you said, was a phenomenal decision. He got the absolute most out of pairing up with Cam Ward and posted a career high 1,127 receiving yards, 11 touchdowns. The thing that was most exciting for me about what we saw in this senior campaign is they started using him down the field a ton more. He jumped up almost 40%, up to 16.3 yards per catch, up from about 12 in the year prior. Strong hands, good body control downfield, good acceleration, right? Like he's phenomenal at creating separation off the line. He's really good at finding those soft spots in the zone and just turning and making his numbers available to his quarterback like a nice, safety net type of reliable target. Honestly, he doesn't have the speed, but if he finds himself into a situation, he could play like a Ladd McConkey type of role, right? He's not nearly as fast as that. I don't want it to be the takeaway, right? But his ability to create separation in short area, his reliable hands, that reliability or that kind of safety net role for the
Too bad
quarterback
Bill
are all
Belichick
things
doesn't
that
coach in the NFL anymore. This
yeah.
is a Belichick kind of guy.
Yeah. So Xavier Restrepo
Mhm.
made the most of his senior campaign. I think a guy that can potentially show out here in Mobile and boost up his draft stock a good bit.
Yeah, I'm honestly surprised. Like, I mean, he was playing with Van Dyke before he was playing with Cam Ward. So I'm surprised, like, he didn't even take a bigger step in his statistics this past year in his counting stats. Like, still improved pretty much, across the board, besides in the receptions department. But, I think when you're making explosive plays, going for 16.3 yards per reception, you're not going to have as many receptions. So, I don't mind the call at all. Double dipping back from last year. I do remember that conversation, as you alluded to as well. I do want to round out the rookie discussion here with the one tight end that we're really locking in on for the Senior Bowl. Harold Fannin out of Bowling Green. He was a top 100 player coming into the season and blew away expectations. This dude is an absolute menace. Consensus All-American. Mac Offensive Player of the Year. I don't know if you guys are like me, but I love Mac Nation on Wednesday night. Yeah, I can't get enough of it, man. And led the MAC and the country in receptions of all players, not just tight ends, 117. Also led the country in receiving yards, over 1,500. Next closest guy to him didn't even have 600 yards on this team. Eric, what are your thoughts on Fannin as we're coming into the Senior Bowl? Does he project as your tight end 3 in this class? I know Gunnar Helm, a lot of people like him, a lot of people like Ferguson out of Oregon as well. 2 players we're expected to see more of in Mobile this weekend. What are you thinking here for Fannin? Where does he slot in? And what do you think you're hoping to learn from this process at all?
I've currently got him at 3, to your point. I think if things go favorably for him in this process, he could be the first tight end off the board when we get to the draft in April.
I agree.
Absolutely
I agree.
explosive offensive weapon. I mean, not only set, but just obliterated every school record, a lot of MAC records, right? Just putting up prolific numbers. He also showed an ability to be pretty effective as a runner. The thing that I like most about him is, look, he's from an FBS school at Bowling Green, right? So like his strength of competition is always going to get beat up. But then you look at his games against Power 5 opponents. Penn State, have you heard of them? Apparently they were a receiver away from winning the national title. He put up 11 receptions, 137 yards in a score. Texas A&M 8 for 145 and 1, right? Like he played very, very well against the best competition that he faced, and he's going to have a bigger opportunity to showcase that during the Senior Bowl, during the pre-draft process, right? The biggest question for him, whether or not he will jump up to that tight end 1 rank, is he's kind of undersized. He's 6'4", but he's 230, right? He doesn't have a whole lot of bulk to him. There are legitimate open questions about his ability as a blocker, right? Whenever they have him in line. So if he's down there in Mobile getting completely blown up on the edge, he's probably going to stay about where he is, maybe even slide a little bit. If he can hold his own, if he can show that he can get some push on the blocking side, if he can block and head into his route and create enough timing for his quarterback, I think this is a guy that people can absolutely fall in love with. And he's got the athleticism to be the first tight end off the board if everything breaks in his favor.
Yeah, I was about to say that when he played Penn State, he was one of the 2 Bowling Green players I knew, and I had him circled, and I was watching him like a hawk. And I said, "We can't stop that." And Bowling Green came out like I mean, we are in danger of losing that game at one point. Like, that was one of the closest games Penn State played all season long. Bowling Green absolutely took it to us. So another guy stayed loyal to his team. Love to see what he did down there in the MAC this past year. Steve, right now, I know you aren't the biggest Tyler Warren guy. Age is a factor there. I know we've heard some mixed reporting on really what Tyler Warren's age is. You like Colston Loveland, but it sounds like you like Fannin too.
I do, especially with, again, like, we're going away from this need to be an inline blocker. The Travis Kelce of the world, they've changed the game, right? And having a tight end who could take a screen, for a touchdown is important to a lot of coaches. And Harold Fannin is an athlete among athletes, right? Like, you look at this guy and you're just like, this dude is an athletic freak. Like, and that's playing against athletic freaks.
Yeah.
So when you do that, when you just pass the eye test so cleanly, you are already in that discussion at a thin position. If he shows that he's even passable as a blocker,
Mhm.
I would happily put him as my tight end 1.
Yeah, and I know
as long as it's not a liability, right?
and I know a lot of people like shred on him for playing in the MAC. The MAC's a pretty good conference, honestly. Like I think the MAC is like, I mean, right up there. Like I don't think it's that far behind the Big 12. I'm gonna be honest with you. Like
Stop it.
I mean, it's a G5 conference, but I still think it's a damn good conference. I still think there's good play in there.
It's one of the better FBS conferences, but it's not a stone's throw from the Big 12.
But then at the same time though, like you said, Eric, like this guy proved it against top level competition every time he was playing, a Power 5 school or Power 4, excuse me now. But I'm there with you. I love Harold Fannin. Excited to see kind of what he can do down here in Mobile, Alabama. Absolutely. That's going to end it for our sleepers here. We are going to shift gears a little bit into TV shows that have the most to prove in 2025, shows that we think potentially could get canceled, because that's what we do here at IBT. We like to mix in a little pop culture with our fantasy football. Again, if you guys enjoy this type of content, please give this video a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. We're here live every Tuesday night, 9:30 p.m. Eastern time. So in the spirit of something to prove, we're going to put the rookies aside. We're going to talk about 2025 TV shows that have a lot to prove to avoid being canceled. Steve, you're a resident entertainment betting expert. You bet on this for a living over on our show, Popcorn and Root Beer. What are you thinking here for TV shows, man? What's something that you got your eye on that could even either have a pretty big 2025 or maybe let some viewers down and, hey, see you later.
Yeah, I do want to point out that I am making money on Kalshi right now off of my bets. So usually when I lay the money down, it's right on.
Better than our NFL gambling last week. I'll tell you what, we were a little dry, I think, as a show. Little tough one.
Yeah,
Take one
entertainment has been my my hot spot right now, and I think the show that I'm watching and I'm hoping it continues to do well is High Potential, starring Caitlin Olsen. First off, I love her. I love her so much. She is so funny, and It's Always Sunny. She was hilarious.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
She was hilarious in the Mick. I thought that show should have gone for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 seasons.
Sure.
This is a good show, and she's a good actress. So I am very hopeful that this will continue. It just has to get a little bit less procedural.
Okay.
It's a little too cookie cutter right now, but it's got potential. It's got high potential, right? So not to put a hat on a hat, but I like it, and I think if it has a solid second season, we could see this make a good run. But it's also a show that seems like it's costing a lot of money to make.
Where's it produced at?
I believe it's NBC.
Okay.
Right now.
Gotcha.
And listen, shows are getting canceled left and right? Even great shows aren't making it. Netflix is notoriously canceling a lot of shows.
Yeah.
NBC, though, I believe that's where the show is, tends to give a little bit of a leash. And this got renewed for season 2 before season 1 ended, which is a good sign.
Yeah.
So I like its odds of continuing. I hope it does, because I think Caitlin Olsen deserves all the success in the world because she's just phenomenal.
Yeah, they did her a little dirty in that Abbott crossover. I don't know if you guys saw that one, but
she was hilarious in that one, though.
It was, but they definitely. I mean, they made that whole crew look pretty shady. But
they are shady. That's the whole point.
Yeah, that's kind of that show's MO. Eric, shifting out of Always Sunny High Potential talk, what's a show that you think might be getting canceled after this year if they don't have a big 2025 showing?
Yeah, I'm gonna make a bit more of a practical argument for Only Murders in the Building, a show that, to Steve's point, with the show that he talked about, very, very expensive to produce. Just an absolutely star-studded cast: Martin Short, Steve Martin, Selena Gomez, Meryl Streep, Jane Lynch. Right? They're also paying for a ton of cameos from some of the biggest A-list names out in Hollywood. So I think, this is now 4 seasons in, 40 episodes, very high budget production. And just in general, like the construct is kind of limiting, right? Like it's very well-to-do people living in a brownstone on the Upper West Side, and murders happen inside of that building and they try to solve the murder. Like at a certain point, you can only recycle that storyline for so many seasons. So I think it's a little bit, self-fulfilling, right? Like they can only kind of push that out so far. And, these studios are going to look at a pretty expensive budget for a show that might start to taper off this year.
Not for nothing, but also Steve Martin and Martin Short are very old now. So, like they may not have, like they may want to do something else, like time is not a luxury they have.
Steve, what's the internet think about this show? They still about it? Because I know a couple years ago when this was first coming out, my fiance and a couple other of the women in my life were digging. Is that still kind of the same vibe, or just not as much hype and buzz?
Everything I've seen has been positive for Only Murders in the Building. Yeah. I mean, my mom loves this show. It seems to be a show that, like, kind of 30 to 50-year-olds seem to dig, like, especially the female demographic. With Selena Gomez and Martin Short and Steve Martin, kind of appealing to that demographic a little bit more. Not saying that they don't appeal to mine. I haven't watched it yet, but that's because I'm kind of a weirdo and I love to watch shows after they've ended because I don't want to get invested and have them cancel halfway through. So I haven't checked it out yet. I've heard great things about it. Anytime you add Meryl Streep and Jane Lynch to anything, you could literally have Meryl Streep play Batman, and I'm 100% in. Like, I'm in. I'm bought in. Like, you got me.
Yeah.
Jane Lynch is hilarious as well. Sue Sylvester is an icon in the world of pop culture.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Glee, banger.
Like, I think this show is still pretty well regarded. So if it got canceled, I think it would be more out of hey, we're kind of done, rather than like it just died.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll round us out with a show potentially on the chopping block here in 2025, and it's Rescue High Surf. And we kind of joked about this show when it first came out.
A long time ago,
Yeah, we did a Would You Rather game, and I actually caught the first episode. It was after a NASCAR race on Fox. Was kind of interested. I thought the action shots were pretty well done. And it was just always one of those things, like the NASCAR race ends on Fox. Here's Rescue High Surf for you. And pretty good show, like surrounding this lifeguard crew, like their captain's dealing with the loss of his nephew, relationship shit going on between a couple of the cast members. And one of the characters got like a really good like personal growth story about growing up, taking his job seriously. Like, I love that shit. But the first episode of the spring came out, wasn't my favorite. They're kind of like doing that thing where like you kind of hate most of the main characters right now. And I just don't know. Again, it's a show pretty high budget, I imagine, just because it's produced in Hawaii. Not a lot of notable names, but I don't know how these Fox shows ever go. They don't feel like they ever have a ton of leeway. I'm curious if it gets a second season. Steve, do you think it's back for season 2? No. Do you have any intel reporting from the internet world?
No, but the fact that it's always on the back end of like they're always putting like a NASCAR race in front of it.
Yeah.
They're
got bumped from after the Super Bowl. It was originally going to be after the Super Bowl, got bumped out of that.
So usually what they'll do, right, is after the Super Bowl is usually used for either a show that's coming back that they really want a big audience for, or a show that's starting out. And that way they can get as many eyes on it as they can to try to draw it in.
Yeah, they did the Gordon Ramsay one, I think, a couple years ago.
Right. So if a show is continuously put behind something that has a lot of eyes on it, the show itself isn't doing well. They're trying to force viewers into just like watching it by not changing the channel.
Right.
I know absolutely no one who watches this show regularly.
I mean,
you watch it regularly? Like
I've seen all the episodes. Yeah.
You sit down and you're like,
demographics thing. It's big with NASCAR viewers.
Dude, it got me. Yeah. Like, what can I say?
Busch Light drinkers love high surf. I don't know, like something like that. I don't think the show's gonna survive. It just, the concept is idiotic to me.
I can't believe they made it. I can't believe they made one season.
I can't believe someone was like, you know what people need is another lifeguard show. Like, what else do you want? It's so,
we need Baywatch with less recognizable names.
Right. Yeah. It's like, this is just a bad concept.
It's trash television. What can I say? But
It's like trash television that doesn't think it is, though. That's the problem. Is like at least trash television is usually self-aware. This
yeah.
is not self-aware. It's probably like got a massive budget because they're like I don't know what they want to be. They want to, you know what they want to be is 911, which is another insufferable kind of
Oh
thing they have to deal with sometimes.
yeah. They love
But
that.
that's what
Yeah.
they want to be, but with like tropical
Yeah.
thing. We'll get a 911 Hawaii.
Oh,
soon.
those 911s. I mean, how many are there's got to be? I mean, there's a good
It's a
7
new
or 8.
Law and Order. It's a new CSI.
Yeah.
Every decade or so, we get a new crime procedural that has
Just
8,000
runs.
spinoffs because
Yeah.
it was CSI New York, Miami, Las Vegas, whatever, and then it was Law and
All
Order
the Chicago
SVU, Law and
shows.
Order,
Yeah.
the Chicago Med, Chicago PD, Chicago
Yep.
Fire, and now they want to do Rescue High Surf. This will either be canceled or like somehow weirdly packaged into 911 Hawaii.
All right. Well,
NCIS high surf.
Yeah.
well, we're hoping for you, baby. We're hoping for you on the North Shore over there. You guys can pull it out. Want to thank everyone for tuning in tonight, talking a little 2025 rookie class at the Senior Bowl. Also talking some cancelable TV shows with us. If you guys enjoy this content, we're here every single week, 52 weeks out of the year, live 9:30 p.m. Eastern time. And if you enjoyed other type of content, whether it's college football, whether it's NASCAR betting, PGA betting, entertainment betting, or you just want to hang out with us and talk NFL football, that's cool too. We got you here at In Between Media. Make sure you're following Eric at Fantasy Nav. Make sure you're taking in all of Steve's insufferable takes at Steve_Lawson93. I'm on Twitter at @between_SethFF, but please, easiest way to support us all, just subscribe to the channel, come back, hang out with us again. Kyle, thanks for your help in the back end, brother. Enjoy a week of no football other than the Senior Bowl and Pro Bowl and, some other kind
The
of
Royal Rumble this weekend.
Yeah, Royal Rumble. We're going to have an article on that out on the website, inbetweenmedia.com this week too. But low-key good week for sports. So Senior Bowl, Pro Bowl, Busch Light Clash. I guess not the Busch Light Clash anymore. Cookout Clash, technically. But we'll talk more about that on Thursday on the Back Road. Until next time, though, y'all know what to do. Keep it in between. Thank you.